meeting of the Southampton Town Landmarks Board for September 20th, 2022. This meeting is being held both in person in Town Hall and via video conferencing through Zoom webinar. The link to participate in this meeting via video conference can be found on the town's website at the town clerk's agenda and meetings portal. If you do not wish to join the live meeting, you can still watch live stream on the town website. And if interested in submitting any written communications for the public record, you may do that through the town's website as well. The Zoom webinar is being moderated by CTV. If you are participating in this meeting via Zoom and wish to speak, you can indicate in the chat feature of Zoom that you would like to speak on a particular agenda item so that the CTV moderator can let you in at the appropriate time. A reminder to all that those who wish to speak at the meeting, please give your name and hamlet of residence for the record. And a reminder that the meeting is being recorded, and if you are speaking via Zoom, try to make sure you're speaking into your home microphones so that you can be heard here. Thank you. Okay, first item on the agenda is the question of minutes. There are no minutes, written minutes from our last meeting, as well as a few of our prior meeting minutes. I've come to the conclusion myself that I'm not going to do them anymore. The town attorney's office, not speaking to the right party by telling me that the minutes are supposed to be done within 10 days of a particular meeting, is not speaking to the right party. It is really the job of land management to prepare the minutes. And the last I heard, and Stephanie probably can recall, that she inquired back in June and was told that no one is available, and until she gets an additional position, there wouldn't be any resource for the preparation of minutes. However, the town code requires land management to prepare the minutes. So, eventually between human resources, the head of land management, and the town council's office, they have to get their coordinated viewpoint together to decide how that problem is going to be solved. Any comments from anyone?
The other thing I mentioned, I actually had run into John Bouvier, and he was wondering why there were no minutes for a while. So I have no problem reaching back out to him to explain what's going on, if that would be helpful.
That would, and you can repeat the comments that I just made, certainly. The town council did say, in effect, the fact that there is recording of our meetings, they do, in effect, become a kind of minutes and are available to the public immediately at the close of the meeting. So the little code requirement of being out there in 10 days is probably already met, she thought, but she did suggest that there should be a written version of them. It's probably something in the age of Zoom and recording that probably has to be looked at in terms of the requirements, and the requirements are somewhat governed by New York State statutes for local governments, so there might be other things in the background that have to be addressed as well. Okay, next item on the agenda was the pending historic historic applications and outreach. Just as a point, Stephanie included the Bridgehampton Historic District on the agenda for this meeting. It was actually intended and pointed to be scheduled for October 18th at our next meeting, so that two things can be accomplished. One is the preparation of some research to address the issues raised by the Bridgehampton Civic Association with respect to the scope of the district. The question being whether or not the original idea for just a Main Street district is useful and beneficial, or that, as the Civic Association maintains, a wider scope, including the residential houses in the Bridgehampton Hamlet Center, also be included. And I needed myself to get a better handle on the number of house losses in the Hamlet Center, and how stable the Main Street is versus how stable the residential neighborhoods are. And so I wanted to get some time to do that research before bring it to you in order to get your opinion and voice on perhaps what path to take on the scoping for Bridgehampton District. So we'll probably have participation via Zoom from every indication I've heard at our October meeting from the Bridgehampton Civic Association as well. The next item is 3 East Pond Lane, and Stephanie, do you have the comments to offer for us?
Yeah, I circulated historic summary a week or so ago about East Pond Lane, 3 East Pond Lane, which is also known as 358 Montauk Highway. It does have an interesting history. It was originally apparently built for a captain who was basically, he was involved in the coastal trade between Eastern Long Island and New York City, taking cordwood into New York City and sailing back with brick and groceries and coal for the local community. That was a Captain William Tuttle. After his time, it was owned by the Rowland family, and of interest there, the first telephone exchange in Eastport was in the eastern portion of the house. More recently, it was owned by the Attleworth family, who is well entrenched in the history of Eastport with the Attleworth Bluff Company and a formerly garage right around the corner from this dwelling. The owner of this house approached me through a local contact and was interested in landmarking the house, primarily to see if she could acquire funding for restoring the house, at least partially, back to a more original condition. In the front of the summary I sent is a picture that was in the 2014 Southampton Historic Resources Survey. It shows the house form essentially as it exists now, but at that time it was covered with blue asbestos shingles. The windows downstairs had been replaced, but the upstairs windows were still original, as was a little attic window. Since this time, it had been acquired by what I believe is a house flipper, and basically all of the original remaining windows, except for the attic window, have again been replaced, and the outside is now clad in vinyl. And other than the form, it does not appear to have much in the way of original historic materials on the exterior. So I had some questions about whether it would be landmark worthy or not, and beyond that, whether it would be possible to get a facade easement, at least in its current condition, I know, David, I believe you're there tonight, and you had also some conversation with the owner, Julia Hannibal. Julia, are you on the call right now?
Kevin, do we have a participant on the Zoom?
What was the name again?
Julia?
It's over behind you.
Yeah.
Yes. He does.
Yes?
He says he has her.
Yeah, she's joining.
Okay.
Okay, great. Julia, would you like to speak a little bit about your interests here and your concerns about landmarking versus some of the other things you were considering, like solar panels? All right, I see you.
You're muted, Julia.
Unmute, please.
You're muted.
Signed home.
I can't read the comment.
Something on my computer.
From Julia Hannibal.
Not,
Kevin should be able to
not
unmute
muted
her.
on my computer, I think it said.
Yeah. Kevin, can you unmute Julia?
I don't have her muted.
Oh,
Okay.
Julia, if you can hear us, you have to unmute yourself by,
She's not muted.
What's wrong with her computer?
Does she have a microphone?
In this case, the opposite of what's known.
by clicking on the microphone symbol on the lower left.
She has a computer issue.
Julia, the other thing you could do is dial in and do an audio connection that way. There you go.
Yeah.
Can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there's a lot of feedback.
Hold on. Okay, so I was able to sign in with my phone, not with my computer. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you for inviting me tonight, and thank you for considering my house. I did some research on the house, and Stephanie, thank you for presenting it in such a concise manner. I just started this process because I wanted to, as a way of lowering some of my bills, I was putting solar on the roof. And then I learned about the historical component to the house and the possibility of getting it into the registry. And I think that what I've learned is that due to the amount of replacement, all of the materials that have been replaced on the house, it almost disqualifies the house for historic value. And I just wanted to double check with everybody that that was true. And then moving forward, it seems to me that I would have to shingle the house and replace the windows in order to get some consideration for the programs that are being offered. And is that the case?
The question of one, would it qualify for landmark designation, I think is still an open question. There might need to be, I think, a bit more information and assessment of the integrity of the original build of the house. I'm not sure that the fact that some windows have been replaced necessarily would disqualify that. I think that's something to be discussed by the board. as the question would be presented more formally. But that's something for the board members here to express their opinions on as well. This is not, I think, a question of clear-cut not qualifying and clear-cut qualifying. I think it's probably somewhat, in a gray area of how good it is of a structure for landmark designation and how significant the history of the people associated with this building.
Okay,
So I can't, give you a yes or no tonight, and the board is, I don't think, prepared to do that as well, without
Okay.
giving more thought and getting more familiarity with the extent of the changes in the building that have already been made.
all right.
So.
So that's the question of landmarking. I think the question, at least of a historic facade easement right now, is more clear. Because again, the only thing left of the facade that's historic is the attic window and the overall form of the building. All the other exterior materials have been replaced. So the historic facade easement, which is the bigger pot of money potentially available, I think is more out of reach. That's my feeling about this.
Okay.
What does the rest of the board have an opinion about this?
We also, and I don't know the answer to this off the top of my head, but every 5 years or so, the Community Preservation Fund, which acquires the facade easements, has a list of priorities for acquiring facade easements. I haven't looked at that list, and I don't know whether this is on that list, but that's would establish some question of the interest of the Community Preservation Fund in pursuing a facade easement. That, and given the fact that it's not at the moment designated a landmark and so on, it probably is campaigning uphill to try and activate a facade easement for this property.
I think, I understand where you're coming from, and even, putting the facade easement aside, my understanding of what qualifies the house is the build, the structure itself, and most of the original materials are beneath the plastic siding that the previous owner put up. And then the historical elements of the Tuttle family and their contribution to the town, I think, the house does qualify, I believe, historically. And I think what is disqualifying the house is the outside. It's the vinyl siding. And so I feel confident that if I were to, remove the vinyl siding, there are shingles right beneath it, and it returns to that blue color that it was for, 40 years. So I feel like the two most difficult hurdles in getting historical recognition would be met. The history of the house, the people who lived here and their contribution to town, and then the building itself. It's it's built with steel beams because there was a welder on the property, and the whole house is framed with steel beams. So it really does have a unique place in the history of home building out here and how they did it and how they managed it. Every window is a different size by just 3/4 of an inch, and it's different. It's placed differently. Every nook and cranny. I've gone over 4 and 5 times just trying to straighten things out so I could hang a picture on the wall. So I have confidence that the house itself and its building, the materials, the way they built it is sort of fascinating to me. And I keep finding those really old nails that were individually made. And stuff is constantly coming out of the yard that I'm saving because it all looks so incredible. And then, so that just sort of leaves me puzzled as to what I should do with the facade. Like, should I do the investment of cedar shingles, and how do I make that decision? Because I would hate to do it. I would hate to put out all that money and then still be rejected.
Well, we can't answer that question for you in terms of what's the kind of investment that you would make in the house. Certainly, restoring the house with and getting rid of the non-traditional siding would elevate the idea that the house has some form and integrity of a style that would go along with the historic persons associated with it to provide a case for landmarking. In other words, that would be moving in a direction that would support it. But nothing comes with a guarantee. So
I totally get it, and I appreciate that explanation. And I know there's no guarantees, but I guess what I also don't know is there motivation to do this? Is this something the town is interested? Are you looking for houses to join the historic preservation? Like, is this something that you guys are looking to expand on, and I'm in the right place at the right time? Or is this just something that's always been sort of quietly done, and there's no real urgency to put any houses in? I just don't know really with the town's angle.
Well, the town has a general policy and plan, and its comprehensive plan for historic preservation. The present specific forms of that, and in recent years, has been to designate particular structures as town landmarks. And the way that has been done has been generally as a response to an application by an owner with a credible case for having their house or structure designated a landmark. And actually, it hasn't always been a house, it's been windmills and other things. So the question is probably one of your timing to do something, perhaps down the road after your process of restoring or transforming the house in some way brings it more into what would be considered an original condition on its exterior, would provide for the opportunity to apply for landmark designation in a formal way.
I wonder if inadvertently the way it is structured is financially prohibitive for a person in my situation. And I would think that it's not financially prohibitive for a lot of the people that purchase second homes out here to be able to change the facade and then get this grant and then landmark their house, which lowers the taxes. It's a fantastic program, and I feel like sort of as a local person, it's out of my reach because financially I can't bring the house to the state that you would like to see it. And I wonder if that, if there's any consideration that inadvertently very wealthy people would be able to qualify their homes a lot more quickly than, say, myself, a school teacher.
We haven't had that experience. So, the most I can offer you is the encouragement to, work with your house in terms of your personal preferences. If it is towards a more historical character, to potentially see it as a town landmark, that's certainly one path. And whatever benefits that might bring down the road versus dealing with the house on its own terms without having to worry about trying to reach a certain standard, which may be more expensive than you can entertain.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate your consideration and your feedback. And I've got some things to think about.
Well, and thank you, because we are also getting an education about the particular problems associated with trying to maintain old homes that exist in the town. We have some sympathy for the challenges that you face.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Julia.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Okay, and Stephanie, thank you for preparing and providing the background for this discussion. It was, I think, very helpful.
Yep. And may be of benefit in the future if there's a continued interest in landmarking this house.
Okay, demolition permit applications. 374 West Neck Road, North Sea. Jeff, you had some chance to observe it, and you pointed out that the pictures were on the application were worth 1,000 words.
Yeah, pretty much.
Let me see if I can
mean,
bring
I
up
took a
the
bunch more.
application for us to just take a peek at the, I think the pictures speak for themselves pretty much.
Well, I couldn't, there was no house number out, right? But it was the last house on the block.
Yeah,
And
I had
it had to
trouble
be
navigating.
374 or.
Yeah, I
there
had
was
trouble
no
navigating
374.
the numbers too, yeah.
But there was a lady out next door, and she turned out to be the homeowner there, and she told me that the lady that had lived in that house, Henrietta, had lived there for 40 years or something, and as soon as she died, her son immediately put it up for sale.
Okay,
He
so,
would keep it, but then on the side where you park, where the ramp goes down to the West Creek, there's a sign from a real estate showing a very modern house that as I said to this lady, I'm like, well, that won't be an improvement for you, will it? Because it will be blocking her entire view of the water. Because it's like a two-story house versus, yeah, I mean, what's there now is only one story. And that, it's not like that inside. That was like, they cleared it out and then somebody with
Digitally staged.
magical powers
yeah.
put that furniture in there.
A sales brochure, yeah.
Yeah, because they're not trying to fix it. It's just the way it was.
Yeah. Yeah, I looked at maps going back to 1960 or so. The house had the same form.
Yeah.
There, it was,
The neighbor said that her house, they all just seem to be a bunch of bungalows from some point. And she said that her house, her husband's family had purchased the land like 100 years ago,
Oh.
which, 1922, not as far back as it used to be.
So anyway, this is the replacement that appears to be.
Yeah, that's it. You have to
And,
turn your head, and
uh,
if you go to the other elevation, it violates the permit law violently, but
How do I turn this?
actually, you can't turn it, there's more elevations, there's several, they all look the same.
It's hard to tell which way to turn your head.
If I'm not mistaken, the West Neck area was like a lot of the camp area, a
Yeah.
lot of that was the summer homes.
She said that.
Numerous people
She said that. A lot
had
of people
camps up
They would
there.
have
And
they
so
would have
if
they would
this was
rent their house on Linden Lane, say, and
exactly and go
Yeah.
there, everybody had camps.
Yeah,
Not
so-
everybody, but if you had any type of.
So
but
we're not
that's
in the
only way I could
business
think the
of-
I know, commenting on
1902
this,
section was
guess
part of a camp.
good news
because
is
I'm
you
not
can
seeing-
see through parts of it.
It's a shoreline cottage or, shoreline property there.
There's
Well,
the,
there you go.
Yeah.
the pyramid line of death.
Okay, we'll leave that
I mean,
unresponded to. Okay, so
It'll be up to ZBA.
there's no concern here, no objection. I'll write the response, thank you, okay.
I think they refer to it as Craft Modern. I'm not sure if that's a brand name, modular, or a company.
I saw that too, and
I don't know what
it
Craft,
didn't ring any bells in my,
but it was in quotes also, so it almost seemed like a company.
yeah, well, I think it's a real estate agent making things up, or.
Craft
Expedite.
Modern.
Was that one of the Sears catalog models?
Yeah, so that's what, they all
think
said
that's-
Craft Modern, but they didn't list an architect.
Yeah,
Okay,
like, what
so-
is Craft Modern?
40, demolition for 43
Oh, boy.
Flanders Road. This, Tim had done a brief survey of its background. Tim, would you want to summarize what
Sure.
was there? See if I can bring up the report, too.
Sure. So the property appears on the 1909 E. Belcher Hyde map under the ownership of Nathan Downs. It looks like it would be a state, unless it's a typo. But the Downs family was one of the original Southampton settlers in the area of Flanders. There's a note that William Downs, Cooper of Southold, sold 4 lots of meadowland to John Corwin for 5 shillings, situated south of Peconic River in 1705. So that associates the family with this immediate area. His later descendant Nathan Downs is the owner referenced in the map. He was born in 1850 to Austin Downs and Mary Lane. In an 1860 census for Flanders, the Downs family was listed as Austin, Mary, Austin Jr., Nathan, and Eliza. Was able to find Nathan Downs' obituary, stating that he was involved with equestrian pursuits like harness racing. Found a very interesting article about his son, who was interested in horses, but more in the organized crime area, where he was arrested when he came to visit his father after being away for many years. The ownership of the property transferred to the Jennings family, Harry Moore Jennings, and his wife Mabel Blanchard Tuttle. They had a son, Harry Jennings Jr., who was a radio communicator, worked at RCA Communications, and he relocated with his family to Florida, worked as a software engineer on space shuttle missions, and then for Honeywell. It appears that his father had sold the property to a Condor Development in 1951, and the property was ultimately came under the ownership of the current owner, an applicant for demolition of the structures. There were a few discards that seemed to be a little circuitous and possibly wrong address for the property, but that was the history of the owners. The fire was definitely detriment, but it does allow us to forensically see some of the original materials, such as the wood clapboard siding and some of the wood shingles remained on the roof over the original lath.
This is located very close to the
Traffic circle.
traffic circle in Riverhead, just to
Riverside.
give you an indication of the position here. So,
There.
and the house obviously had been there for quite a while, you know. It was, so, I don't think we have any problem with,
The fire demolished. that,
right,
so-
yeah, that, it's gone to its grave. So there's no objection. You want to do the paperwork on it? Okay,
Do you think you could send me an updated template?
pardon?
Could you send me an updated template?
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, demolition, 2881 Montauk Highway. I did send out a report on that to you all. I did get some communication about it from some concerned people in Bridgehampton that they had a question as to its identification. They thought the house had once belonged to a prominent member of the African American community in Bridgehampton, Irving Marshall, I believe, and but actually it did not. He had the house next door. And that report that I sent indicated that the builder of the house built the house in 1897. That was then traded away, as I indicated on this, tried to indicate on this map here, that he built his first house at the X marks the spot, and then he built his 1892 house at the Y spot on the map. And it's indicated here, Nelson Edwards built it 1887 on a house on the lot next east of James Ludlow, and that became the Irving Marshall House, and the 1892 house was a result of his having traded the house lot. Marshall worked for Mrs. William Hardacre, so she wanted the caretaker of her estate living across the street from her house. She bought the Captain Ludlow house on the north side of the highway, and her caretaker would be living opposite, almost on the south side of the highway in Bridgehampton. This is basically the property that's at issue for demolition, outlined in red. The wetlands area is marks right about here on the edge of the woods, about a third of the property size. The house is, and garage structure and other items there occupy less than half of the northern portion of the property. The Edwards family occupied it for basically 4 generations, or owned it since 1892, up until about in the 90s, or the year 2000, when one of the elderly members of the Edwards clan died, and it passed to the children, one who lived in Albany and one who lived in Illinois. So they were not going to have the house, and sold it to another owner who in recent years has been renting the house there. I found the house did not particularly have much historic character to it. Actually, it has always been on the margins of the village, and you leave Bridgehampton on Montauk Highway, you right away accelerate right past the house at 50 miles an hour, and it's heavily landscaped, so it didn't have much there. I couldn't find any historical personage in the context of Bridgehampton history. It's kind of built in a farmhouse style, certainly, and does have that kind of character as a traditional shingled structure. And the garage outside did not present any, I think it's more modern built. No evidence of the worker, except it might have been Nelson Edwards himself, who was a carpenter, although I could not find any reference to him building anything else. He originally came from Watermill and took care of the chickens on the Burnett.
Bennett, you had Bennett?
Bennett, maybe,
Yeah.
Bennett, estate. And then he was locally engaged in local politics, town politics, and got part-time political positions as salaried positions that he held for 25, 30 years in Southampton town. I couldn't find a great deal of weightiness to the idea that this was a significant historical structure in terms of its place. It's 1892, and it was mentioned in AKRF. I didn't put up the page in this report, but
93.
yeah, BH HD 93. Yeah, it's not being maintained. Obviously, I think in anticipation of the idea that it's being sold to CPF for water quality purposes, and in the absence of a policy of trying to acquire property for both water quality purposes or other purposes and historic preservation, I didn't find enough merit to think that we should object to it, so I would recommend not objecting to it. If you have comments about it.
Yeah, I would just say the interior pictures look like it was fairly well maintained from the interior part. But I trust your judgment, Ed. You know Bridgehampton much better than I do. I just would, personally would prefer if we would get this up front before the CPF purchase public hearing is made and you made the recommendation that you felt that, we shouldn't object to it because of the lack of historical or architectural significance, rather than reading about in the newspaper that the hearing had already taken
place. Yes.
But if beforehand you had also recommended that, I would have trusted your judgment. So I will trust your judgment after the fact also. But then I think it's going back to the house itself and the whole process that it's the workforce housing. If it's not historical, if it's a functional house, if there's some way, particularly if the wetlands only takes up the back third and you can save the front lot and the house and have a workforce housing that we desperately need east of the canal versus tearing it down, it all going to the dumpsters.
Well, that's an argument for having CPF policy changed or powers changed, as the case may be, in order to allow those possibilities. My suspicion is that it is actually, it's a 4-bedroom house, but I believe there may be unrelated parties renting it, as, quote, workforce housing. Bridgehampton is seasonal community with need for seasonal help in restaurants and golf courses and country clubs and other things like that. And I suspect that that's exactly the kind of place that would serve that kind of
And I'm not
seasonal-
sure. I trust your historical assessment, of course, that you wouldn't have recommended landmarking it or preserving it, but it's just, we have a functional house. I think recently there was one down in Flanders. There've been several. There was one in Watermill, that they're serviceable houses that could be used.
Right, you're talking about the old Goodale House
Yeah,
in
exactly,
Flanders.
not the other
Right,
one.
and.
But it's more, and I think there was one situation, and I won't name it, but it was a creative solution that CPF, the town, was buying a plot of land that had a restaurant on it, and they end up saying, wait, let's divide it so something could survive. But I think if it had come to us first, maybe we could have proposed something that, not of a historical nature, but that just for it's preservation. But a
It's not even
functional
just
preservation versus, but that's, so it's the process we could have participated in making suggestions.
I just wanted to interject a minute, just because I happened to see this tonight before I came here on TV, about how school districts and other municipalities out west are having to build these whole little villages so they have school teachers who can live near there. And every time I seem to go by the local station, they're having workforce housing conversations, and the newspaper has it. So why are we just letting people take perfectly good houses and trash them when they could just be assembled somewhere else? It just seems,
I agree, and again, that's, hopefully the buttons can be pressed on the CPF. It's getting a new director
yeah.
that would, hopefully provide for a change in policy and
Right.
decision-making on how these properties would be treated. There's no great justification for having a house like this fill up C&D landfill, as I
Right.
mentioned in the report.
Yeah.
And when it is, in fact,
Viable.
has a certificate of occupancy for human beings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There also is a referendum, of course, in November to do the set-aside and have an additional tax for affordable housing. So I actually have started this conversation, Susan, because I also saw that after the Goodale. So I've had some conversations to try to raise awareness. They've got to change this policy.
Right.
Because
No,
it's just if you had, I'm not sure what the acreage is, I didn't look that up, but you just needed the front, the living lot in the back goes for water quality, and, which I didn't know that Sag Pond, I didn't realize it was wetlands, I couldn't figure that one out, but you explained it. But it would be a win-win.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I don't think that the new legislation would address this issue. This is a completely separate issue.
I can't hear you, Vicki, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I don't think that the pending legislation would address this circumstance.
Yeah,
I think
it seems a little incongruous if
I know,
that
I
issue
know.
should be raised as part of it,
But
right?
unfortunately, it's not within our purview.
Yep.
Yeah. So. Okay, well, we have another one on our list of grievances against the CPF for not contributing to historic preservation, so.
Aggressive town management.
Okay, construction, and I will file the paperwork on that according to the report. I would not object, but provide a footnote of comment on this process. Construction permit applications in Bridgehampton, 2466. We received this application, and it's for mostly internal renovation of a store, and the application had Bill kind of flagged the application when it first came out, that it had a window size change that was involved.
In the door.
This used to be the business that was there, an antique store. Let me see if I can catch up with modern times here, because from an antique store, it is now kind of a boutique item called Le Courcy food store. So they obviously rearranged the counters inside. So we'll get rid of this picture here. They did send in basically what was the floor plan for the store. And most of the activity was associated with the change of this window here, where the new handicap accessible bathroom was going to change the size and arrangement of the doors and the windows there. Myself, I didn't have any problem with it. I did this change of window size is taking place in the alley next door, where I have I do have a picture here. There we go. This is basically the side of the alleyway that this is going to.
Then there was going to be
The
an
altar.
exit door over there also, I think.
Well, this is way back and way beyond. That's out of sight. And there's another commercial establishment in back.
Where the window is now.
Yeah.
Oh, the one that is begging to be replaced.
Yeah.
So I don't myself see any great significance in this, and no reason to object. If that's okay with everybody, I will respond on that basis. Okay.
One thing was interested in when I happened to look it up for the Bridgehampton Historic District 45, it said it was eligible for the state and national register.
Yeah, I don't know when that survey was done back. I've come across that stuff before, and I'm just don't know what process took place in the past.
You used to be able to find it, but in the last year, I haven't been able to locate that.
Okay, anyway, so 664 Noyak Road, North Sea, which is this odd-shaped parcel here. No, we go bigger here. And Jeff was there today to look at it. Let me see if I get oblique.
The building in question is the one just above the pool. That, yes. It's like, it's an old garage, it looks like to me.
And they were making it into a modern pool house.
It's pretty much almost done.
Yeah.
It had a big stop work order in the window, poster in the window. And I spoke to the owner, but she was all like, oh, yeah. And I wanted to go in, but there was sheetrock and there was new stuff that had come in since then, and she just stuck it all in there. But I showed you the pictures of the outside, I mean.
Yeah, let me see the pictures that you sent.
When I looked up the AYBs, what I saw was, of course, 1730 for the main house, but they had a cabana boathouse was 1970, and that was the only other
That's it.
accessory structure.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing
That faces
That
the
this
pool.
is it.
this was
yeah.
the 1970
Right,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
boathouse
it's not a
cabana,
single car garage.
which means we wouldn't technically need to have reviewed
And
it.
then there's this
but then-
mystery figure in the window here.
The yellow poster is what I wanted you to see. That was from January. I don't know who's been doing what, but.
Okay, so
No,
there's no historical significance here to
anything
worry
that
about?
might have been there from 1970
Yeah.
is
So,
long gone.
No objection, well, I'll file the paperwork on it then for this.
I told her I didn't think she had to worry.
Okay, certificate of appropriateness.
Yeah, thank you, Susan, for your email today about the COA for Nathaniel Rogers.
So
I
it's all,
don't think we can hear you.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah,
I wanted to thank Susan for her email today regarding the COA. The previous one I had never seen, that was the draft. So if we can maybe just finish that up together. But you had a question about
I just,
some of the elements that you
I
thought
just,
were missing.
I just, at one time, when I first looked at it, I didn't think it was complete. Not that I want to hold it up. It didn't have current pictures. I said it was the west side, but it shows you how familiar. I was looking at the south side. I said west in my email. But there weren't comparison photos. But I realized that Vicki has seen it, and I'm sure Ed has, so I'm trusting that you
photos,
two know more than I do. So if you've seen it and you feel comfortable with that, I tried to read narrative would have helped, but I tried to read all those little details, which would have helped to have had,
Yes,
that was a lot of missing pieces there, what had been changed, and that seemed to take care of it. If you looked at the plans and enlarged it, you could read the changes that took place that I wouldn't have been aware of. But that I can work past, but then my only question, and Ed, was there something, and it might be a separate COA from the Bridgehampton Museum or Historical Society?
They don't own the building. The
Okay.
town owns the building.
Okay,
Right.
with it, for the fence, for the fence, flagpole, monument, signs, there may be some things,
Well, the application doesn't include the fence.
right? Flagpole,
What flagpole?
I thought I remember there was a potential flagpole, I don't know if it ever got put up, though.
There's a flagpole and a monument by the house, but
Right.
that's not
The
part of the
monument-
property.
Pardon?
That's not part of the property.
Okay, that's what I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
You're
the-
talking about the flagpole.
The monument isn't part of the
No.
Oh,
no,
okay,
No.
that's what I don't know.
The only other thing that's.
And the flagpole's not on that, okay,
Right, there's no flagpole. Yeah.
okay.
I don't know. The town has been discussing putting a sign there, but they would have to run that by the Landmarks Board at some point.
Yeah,
That's down the road.
and I haven't been by it to know if there is a sign or not, so I trust that you
Yeah,
know.
I haven't seen a sign there.
Okay, no, that's good.
myself.
Last couple of years have been a little.
Well, just to, indicate the background, the COA is supposed to apply to the exterior features. One of the things that was poorly done, so to speak, it's not poorly done, but was done in the wrong direction, because there's a lot of problems associated with people filling out applications for these strange things like a certificate of appropriateness, because there's no pattern for them to follow, there's no experience, there's no explanation in the forms to speak of. So there was one application filed in July 2021 of all interior pictures, which, we don't have any response, and that was filed by the builder, not the owner of it. So just that kind of mix-up indicates that, improvement in the process probably needs to be thought about down the road to make things work more smoothly. I mean, that's just one example, but this one is a little bit better, although it was bumpy getting here because the town CPF
Went ahead.
authorized it, you know, the owner authorized it, and it had much more compliance with what would be expected there, but even because it was filed digitally now with our digital forms, I don't know if you're familiar with all that business, but you know, it didn't wind up getting to the landmarks portal quickly because it was kind of a novel event. But anyway, it was posted and done. The app and had the images that Susan was addressing. Let me see if the application here, just so that everyone can know what is being talked about. Name of the applicant, Town of Southampton, and the consultant is authorized. And pictures, the before pictures. This picture may have been taken in 2005, just after the town purchased it, so.
After they took the gas station away.
That, the reason I say that is that this is, I found this picture today to answer a question that Martha Green asked me. She was upset about the light on the front of the new building, which,
It really isn't, except for that overhead, there's. not a
yeah, I don't
picture
have
of
the, but this fixture is still there, this little globe.
Yeah,
She says she didn't like it and, you know, was just questioning it. But she had visited and she thought the building otherwise was restored to keep its historic character, and so.
it. Was-
more or less.
But I went searching for an old picture and found this one in the listing for the National Register of Historic Places when the application was done in 2005. So that globe was still in
This one says
in place,
2008.
totally consistent there. And of course, this is, you know, the deteriorated wood shingles, unpainted, and this portion of the house was structurally unsound and demolished and restored to the same measurements and including the same oddities that existed in the house beforehand. The biggest oddity was an unusually sized middle window here that they reproduced. It doesn't follow the classic architectural style that you would expect for a building. You can see these two windows. These two windows line up here. This window up here is a bit out, but anyway. So that's the new structure, this portion here with the handicap access designed for a public space for public use. That's the community benefit for the Community Preservation Fund involved. And the patio restorations and porticos, the balustrades involved, and the cupola. This is putting on the newly constructed cupola from the old pictures that they had for the restoration involved. All this was new material, which I believe was not necessary. They used wood, but they could have, I thought, used AZAC. Because it doesn't,
Maintenance issue.
doesn't deteriorate like wood can up there. This is the design elements of the replacement cupola that was there. So one of the things that we have to deal with is we have to apply the standards for the standards for rehabilitating buildings for use. Let me see if this is here. And basically the standards, this is from the Secretary of Interior's guidelines. Rehabilitation defined as the act or making possible a compatible use of a property through repair, alteration, additions, while preserving the portions or features which convey its historical, cultural, and architectural values. That's the point. And they gives the standards, not all of which apply because their standards are as well directed to the question of interior changes, which we don't have under our authority for a certificate of appropriateness. We are not to look at interior appearances, only the exterior appearances. So these are, the property will be given a, is it being given a new use that requires minimal change to distinctive materials, features, spatial relationships? My sense is that that's met. Is the historic character of the property retained and preserved?
Yeah.
I thought so myself. Does the property, is the property recognizable as a physical record of its time and place, given its rehabilitation?
Yes.
No? Changes to the property that have acquired historic significance of their own right will be retained and preserved. Some of that south addition, I don't know, that was put on in 1898 or so to an 1840 house when it became a boarding house, so it's been retained. So that's about as much as I can figure out as belonging to that standard. Distinctive materials, features, finishes, examples of craftsmanship that characterize the property will be preserved on its exterior. There's perhaps less evidence than would be on the inside, but it seems to me that everything was
The
there.
front door, the front entry,
Yeah.
I think is the most distinctive.
Deteriorated historic features will be repaired rather than replaced. The deteriorated historic features that were on that were the columns, the shingling, the windows were broken, some elements of that. I can't speak to the chemical or physical treatments that might have been used for it, but obviously the results speak for themselves. Archaeological resources will be protected and preserved in place. The only thing, there is a damaged or collapsed building, a collapsed shed or a barn on the property itself that just sits there. I don't, nothing really is known directly about it, but it's been there for a long time. It's not been disturbed. And whether or not anything is ever done with it is an open question. New additions, exterior alterations will not destroy historic materials, spatial relationships, etc. I believe that also there really is no new addition to it. It's just the replacement construction that took place. on it. So those are the 10 standards that are there. So with that, I mean, I proposed a resolution with respect to the fence issue. I think was not applied for. And
They
that,
did check off fence or wall in the application, but I don't know which one they were referring to,
yeah.
if that's any help to you. I went back.
Let me see if I got the application here. They checked off.
Application had fence or wall checked.
Wall materials, roof, chimneys, doorways, windows, porches, trim, gutters, paint stain, new construction addition.
Someplace there's the word fence, right there, go back there, site work, fence or
Site
wall.
work, well, there was fencing installed on the property,
Gotcha.
which
Not
has,
referring to.
which, construction fencing,
Gotcha,
right.
I understand now.
However, there is a reproduction fence on the property. They did not, from my understanding, that was not part of this
I didn't see it,
application.
but I
Yeah.
just thought that,
So-
that fence or wall, that was
Right.
site work. Got
But
it.
I think that deserves review and certification.
Yeah. Okay.
So, you know, but
That's-
that's not included in what was being applied for, and I would not include that in the, you know, in the resolution
Okay.
that was there. So let me see if there was a, where is this here? So I did email you a copy of the resolution today, and as I said, I had one. I was unsure who had visited. Vicki, you have
Many
visited
times,
it?
yes.
Susan, you have not?
Not since 20.
Not in
Not-
recent memory.
Right.
And I have been to the site, and Martha has been to the site, and except for her complaint about the lighting on the front door, which she thought was ugly, I guess would be, I don't want to put words on it, but she would not like, she would have changed it if she was in control, so. But otherwise, she was very positive about the work that had been done, and was glad to, you know.
It's a beautiful
fine.
building. I mean, I've only seen it from the road. I haven't seen it close enough to comment, but it's
It is,
pretty
well, it's,
outstanding.
all right.
And the museum.
You
has-
can,
They have.
I believe you can call them up and make an appointment
I
to
will,
see the building. I don't think they're open regularly at this time.
No, but they have retained several of the original architectural elements as part of the display, which is also very interesting to see.
Oh, on the inside, on the.
Yes.
On the,
But pieces of the original balustrade, pieces of this and that, which I thought was quite nice. For architecture, certainly nice to see.
well, if there's, you know, support for passing a resolution tonight to get
Yes.
95% of this business out of the way, and the 5% involving whatever fencing issue can come
Great.
on another day.
exactly.
Yes.
So, is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Vicky makes a motion, okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
And Jeff seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Glad to hear from you, Stephanie. Okay, very good. And he will send that along to the appropriate authorities there. We don't, we can do without that. Okay. Referrals. 57 Station Road, West Hampton. From the planning board, is that correct?
Yes.
And
Actually, Bill did a report a number of years ago.
Yes. We originally looked at this subdivision in 2017. The current application seems the same. We had no problems, no concerns with the original application. They were keeping all of the original buildings. And going through the survey, it doesn't seem to have been modified, and there is no notations that any of the buildings will be removed. In 2017, when we responded to the planning board, we did make a note that if any of the buildings were to be demolished, we would want to be notified. And so we can respond in like and say the same thing again, that we have no concerns with the approval of the subdivision, but that if any of the buildings get demolished,
Or construction.
yeah, or construction to them, yeah, that we be notified.
okay, all right. So the question would be responding to the planning board that thank you for the referral. We have no problems with it as it was presented.
Yep.
Would
Mhm.
you do that for?
I'll do that.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Okay. And the other referral, 512 Country Road, Tuckahoe, we have previously reviewed. This is the Roscoe potato barn, which is being converted to a retail store and was presented to the planning board. It does, again, just as a reminder, would have an apartment in it, I believe, as well. Planning board members at the hearing asked a question. They were intending to replace the metal venting with wooden, basically wooden cupolas, like as vents instead of the existing metal venting, but that was about all. When they were here previously, we found no problem with it, and so if there's no further question about it, we can send a response back. Thank you for the referral. We have seen, this before and find no problem with it.
Except if there's they still need to apply for construction, for building permits. When they apply for the building permit, we would review the specifics of
Any building permit.
building
Right,
permits,
yes, yeah, okay.
Because I think we just received the site plan now, which was fine, because we've
Right.
already looked at those tentative plans.
Okay.
But when they firm up there, but it didn't seem to be a problem at all.
This is not approval for a building department permit, so. Okay. 29 Dock Road, Remsenburg, Spionk.
Okay, this application has been before us for a bit here. I think, my understanding is that the applicant would like to move forward with at this point with a recommendation from the Landmarks Board for landmarking. Bill put together a very nice photo documentation of the current conditions of this home, which is a beautiful craftsman home. And the owner and I collectively put together the history of the property, which was one of the very early duck farm residences in the Eastport, Spion-Remsenburg area, which Eastport was formerly known as the duck capital of Long Island. So it's the Mutina Duck Farm residence that is proposed for landmarking here on 29 Dock Road. Is Bob Mosier on this meeting? Kevin, can you see if he's here?
What was the name again?
The name
Bob
again?
Mosier, Robert Mosier.
No, he's not.
Okay. No?
No? Okay. Yeah, he usually does attend, but at any rate, my last understanding is that he is ready to move forward with a recommendation from this board to the town board for landmarking. I circulated earlier this month or actually maybe late last month, draft text for the recommendation. I did hear back 1 or 2 comments on it, which I made those changes. And I think we're looking for a recommendation tonight to move forward with that. Does anybody
Yeah.
have any questions?
I do, what I wanted, I thought for the recommendation is that it be more specific about how the general criteria in the code applies to the historic fact or data in the report, rather than just, having an assertion. And I did, let me see if I have, I did create, I thought, let me see if I, hopefully I didn't lose it. This might be it there. What I did basically is do 2 things. One, take out the criteria that don't apply.
Yep.
Okay. And with respect to the criteria that you presented, to indicate what it would be in terms of the facts that you presented, so that it possesses the special character or the aesthetic, historic interest of value as part of the cultural, political, economic, social history. And that is by virtue of its historic value as part of the agricultural economy, the duck farming economy of the town of Southampton, which you present. And then embodying the distinguishing characters of an architectural type, obviously embodying the characteristics of the craftsman style with actually the presence of good integrity, a good deal of the integrity of the craftsman style. So those were my suggestions for redoing the statement you sent out.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see it on screen from.
I can't see the screen from where I am.
Oh, well, if Kevin could.
It's a very, very tiny little box.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, yes, I see it now.
So it's basically just doing the specifics and doing the positives.
Okay.
And if you have no problem, we can adopt it and send it along to the town board.
Yep, I think that's great.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I'll move the adoption of this statement to the town board that was drafted and amended in this form. Do we have a second for it?
Second?
Oh, okay, Barbara seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, very good, adopted.
We love Stephanie's eye.
Okay.
And Ed, would you circulate that, or do you?
I will circulate it, yes.
Okay.
And just to make sure that no quirks are to be found in it. No. Okay, other items on other matters, just maybe taking them a little bit out of order. The certified local government need
Yeah, I think we're,
project, are there still outstanding resumes to be?
Yours?
No.
Okay, Jeff, it was
We
Jeff
have
and,
everyone, or
Jeff
no?
and Martha are the two that are missing.
Martha and, okay, and Jeff, so,
when we
I sent
have
you
that, I think we
samples.
should be in pretty
I
good
think.
shape.
I have
No?
a couple of samples.
Yeah.
I have it in a pile on my desk that just keeps getting moved.
I will communicate with Martha about that too. She has been a little bit behind because of her family
Yeah.
circumstance.
Yeah, I emailed her on Friday with all of our samples and gave condolences and whatever, so hopefully we'll hear from her.
Okay, good, good. Okay, so potential CPF acquisition of Methodist Point and 1040 Flanders Road is not on the immediate agenda, but Tim, did you just want to alert us to something about it, or?
I'm just curious as to what the process is going forward with CPF and how they're structuring the purchase, and what the criteria will be for evaluating the structures on the property and as to what's preserved and what's not.
Wasn't there a referral?
Why don't you come up?
I don't really have much to say.
Yeah.
I think there was a referral, so it should be on the agenda, right?
We didn't,
It is on the agenda under other matters.
we didn't get a referral for it that I know of.
We didn't receive any official
Yeah, there was no application.
piece of business, no application, no paperwork on it.
Okay.
So the question is, will it get lost in the complexities of town agencies that we might not have a say in it?
No idea.
I know Julie Green did reach out to Gary Cobb, and Gary did provide some of his archival resources from when he was compiling the document that became the Flanders Hamlet Heritage Area. And other than that, and what David has provided from his personal collection and anecdotal evidence, that's all we've heard.
It seems to me that at some point, I mean, that we should have some, and I don't mean input, but opinion on possibly what's preserved, or what isn't, suggestions. I mean, as a board.
Right.
I mean, versus just finding out after the fact that
I
someone,
mean, I guess because it's not a construction application, it's not,
Yeah.
we don't have the mechanisms
but
for.
often in the it's sometimes in the past, we've actually reviewed and made recommendations to CPF what, if we thought something should be preserved.
Right.
So what might be useful here is to have a point person from the board assigned to or authorized to carry forward the information liaison and advocacy for preservation on this. And if you're willing,
Would be me, yeah.
if the board is willing to have Tim be authorized to speak for the board on this particular project and property with respect to the CPF activity and communicate with Julie Green as well.
Hi, Ed, I'm here.
Oh,
Ah,
hi.
There was
They finally let me in after we will be touching base. There's a second hearing on this on the 27th about purchasing the property with CPF funds using two different target areas, one of which is historic. So none of the buildings will be torn down until we can really survey what's there. We have the large homestead, the 1890 structure, will be restored. And the barn is quite old, and that also will be, at this moment, this is kind of where we're going, will be restored as well. There's a third building that's in question right now, exactly if it's an earlier building that might have been built at the turn of the 19th century. So we're working on that at the moment, but we will be in contact on that. I've been doing lots of research, and yes, somebody mentioned I was in contact with Gary Cobb. I have been. I have the original owner, Captain Smith's will from 1835, as well as the deed of the Smith family selling it to the Griffin family in 1858.
For $675.
Yes, 25 acres.
Right.
So I'm working on all of that with the CPF. So I'll keep everybody on the board abreast of everything that happens there.
Fantastic.
If that's good, that works.
Okay, well, as you know, we've just seen Tim is going to be keeping the Landmarks Board eye on this, so please keep him informed.
Absolutely, Tim, I will keep you informed.
And that will make Janice Young very happy as well.
Yes, I've been in touch with Janice as well,
Yes,
so
yes,
I've been working there's just certain areas in the town where if we can put some CPF to good use, this is one of those. This is one of those properties for sure.
Major focal point.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the history is just fascinating because it also ties in the family, the Smith family and the Squires family are intermarried. So it's another property that CPF has now gotten back is the Ellis Squire Senior House in Hampton Bays, Squiretown Road and Newtown. So the families are intermingled. There's kind of 3 generations of marriages between the two families. So it's fascinating history, and the property is you know, the whole property itself, Outer Neck, was divided in 1763. 7 men were given that property. They shared the lot, and I think it was about 45 acres originally. And so I'm just working on getting,
great,
you know, the deed, you know, the history of the property from 1763 up until when Charles Smith bought it at the turn of the 19th century. So that's where we are.
Great.
And David, I appreciate all your help too, because I know you have, this is a personal thing for you as well.
Thank you.
If it's possible at some point, just along the process, maybe if there's a site visit for people, I'm not familiar with that area except for hearing about it.
Yeah, I think
And seeing it across the water,
as soon as the town
just
would
to
be
take-
able to arrange access, it would be, there's a lot of
Yeah,
interest in
I'll
people.
let you all know about that. It's a very peculiar site at the
Yes,
moment.
yes,
So soon, you know, when it's the town's property, we can,
correct.
yeah.
Okay, so I think we have gotten at least some clarity to
Yes.
how this might proceed, so that's good to hear. That's good to hear. Just with respect to that neighborhood, there's a piece of plywood on the
Yes.
door of the Big Duck.
The county is supposed to have replaced that a few weeks ago. I assume it's just either a procurement issue or a staff issue. But the county did let the Friends of the Big Duck know that that was set to be replaced.
Okay, because, you know,
It's not nice.
yeah,
It's not very friendly.
the town made its case clear that, you know, it was going to be the county. And the only other thing is, of course, the county has been relatively paralyzed with respect to its operations from the cyber attack. And even today, the stale page was not working, that they had substituted. Their email system had been down, and communication through the phone trees was traveling through a forest. So things are proceeding fairly slowly, I think, in that regard. But
And I was just going to mention, I was on the way to Riverhead like a week ago, and you had mentioned at the meeting, I had forgotten about it, but it's so obvious, and there were all the people there taking pictures,
Yeah.
and you're aware of that.
Next time we can paint it white, maybe.
It's just because I thought of the people in their photographs, it's like they're one stop there, and that's,
so,
hopefully you'll.
okay. Demolition and construction list updates, any?
The lists are in progress. The few comments are, of course, the Canoe Place Inn is open for business. You've probably read about that.
I haven't been
I think the
oblivious.
cottages also, I'm not sure, I think they had a soft opening, but that's good news. The other good news, I went past the Diamond House at 14 Flying Point, and it has been moved off of, the original foundation. It's propped up
Wow.
by local movers, and it appears over on the other lot, there was a foundation in place, but it's sitting in between the two lots.
Yeah, they're waiting for the foundation to cure.
Yeah.
So, but it's just, and the basement, and you couldn't see the basement because the ground, it must have just been moved, was still there. But anyways, that's the good news. It is. I kept driving by, they took the windows out. I followed it a little bit, and then one day it was up there. So that's that one. Of course, we mentioned this with CPF. I read about the public hearing for 2881 Montauk Highway, and also for acquiring 33 Quantuck Bay, that's AKRF Quiog 2. And that sounds like it's the John Silas House, I think. How do you pronounce that?
Sills.
Silas House. And Brewster, excuse me, John Silas Brewster House. And I believe there was a fire there a number of years ago, and it has sat there. I understand that, but it's another one we read about after the fact that it sounds like a potential demolition for water quality.
Yeah, it's definitely proposed for demolition.
So, but that would be another nice one, just to know about it ahead of time, at least from my standpoint, besides reading about it, that I hear it here, because we had a little bit of input that the people from the west of the canal that are familiar with it. Because if I didn't happen to be by it, I wouldn't know that. That was during, I think when I was working on the historic resource map. And the other one I read about was in July, a Peconic Land Trust purchased 520 Montauk Highway. There was actually a group of 3, 4, 5 properties there. It's Shinnecock Hills number 15, Atterbury House, one was Grosvenor Atterbury, and I think it was possibly his uncle L.C. Atterbury. They're on the maps. But it's also part of Sugarloaf Hill. It's the other half of a recent purchase for grave protection. So I think that house it's been altered, I think, before, and I think it was in the process again, and it's probably sat for 10 years. But I just see that as being a potential something we may be getting an application for. But we haven't heard about that since July. So that's all underneath the demolition and construction. Did you want me to go to the next?
Yeah.
So since that's next.
Planning board alerts and.
So this is the alert, the 5 agendas that I got through today. The ZBA, the September 1st was just repeats. On September 15th, they had 32 South Phillips. There's an AYB 1925 house, 4-lot subdivision. We may have reviewed that one, but I didn't get, it wasn't last year, it may have been a couple years ago.
It was several years ago, yes.
Okay, but I don't know that area that well, but I thought it looked and sounded familiar. And also there was 119 Dock Road, and that would have been, I think, the Remsenberg Spionk also. They're planning to replace, it's a 1941 house. It looks more like that 1925 house, but they're planning to replace that. I just mentioned that because that's close to your 29 Dock Road.
No.
Where the landmark, but it's 19 Dock Road. I can send that to you tomorrow if you want me to. Would you like me to send
please
that?
do.
I'll send it tomorrow, and
Is that at the ZBA or the
that-
planning board?
that was ZBA.
Yeah, okay.
That was on the
Because
15th.
that's, it's my project?
Oh, no, I'm just gonna send it so you know, no,
Yeah,
you
no, but
just,
it's
that
one of my
you're
projects
aware-
that I'm concerned.
it says 1941, so it may
Yes.
not be anything we're even concerned about. And I'll send it to both of you,
But
just,
we're actually preserving it, and we got a variance to,
oh, you did? Oh, that is your, oh, you,
Yeah.
oh, I thought you meant your project for this
no, not
one.
like, not
Gotcha.
here, but professionally.
Oh,
Yes.
professionally,
So
gotcha.
I'm the architect, we're building a new house on the property, and we
Oh.
got a variance to keep that as what do they call it?
Carriage House?
Sort of, because it's not landmark, we couldn't call it the carriage house, but it's below median apartment,
Okay.
and we got approval to keep it,
Great.
so
Gotcha.
we're gonna
Good
restore
work.
it.
Very nice. It looked like it was a cute little house. Okay. So that answers that question, and thank you. That was at the ZBA on the 15th. Planning Board, August 25th was mostly repeats, except for that 57 and 61. There was a public hearing for the Station Road in West Hampton, the 2-lot subdivision. On September 8th, mostly repeats, and that public hearing was for the 512 County Road 39. And I do have one question about coming up for September 22nd. It's 1640 Montauk Highway, Corrigan's Garage, AYB 1929, to replace windows, doors, and siding. I think they've already done that. Do we want to request referral for that? It's hay ground, so I defer to you, Ed, or you want to just wait and see what happens?
This is a planning board.
They're going to be
Application.
reviewing Corrigan's to replace windows, doors, and sidings, which I think may have already taken place, but AYB 1929.
What-
It's in the Hayground Heritage Area Report, but not a KRF.
I'm just trying to figure out why the planning board would be involved with window replacement.
I am not sure.
So I think that material, there might be some material on the planning board's website or the planning department's website, so I can,
Would you
I can
like
look
me
at
to
it
send
that-
it to you, or you'll just look on your own?
I'll look online to do
Okay.
it.
Well, if you want me to
1640
let-
Montauk Highway.
1640, if you would like me to, fine, if not, that's okay. So you just let me know. And also on the 20th, this would be for Stephanie and Bill, it's the there's a public hearing on the 27th for a wireless tower for the West Hampton Cemetery property. We reviewed it, and I think you gave some feedback, but the public hearing is on the 22nd.
Is there any further information provided? Because we did ask for some additional visual simulations, as I recall.
We haven't received anything else about it. I just read that it's coming up, and I just thought if it was of interest to you too, and if you're following it, September 26th would be the date you might want to review to see what they have to say about it, if they took anything into consideration that you had mentioned.
Okay.
And
It
that's
might
all.
be useful just to inquire beforehand whether or not there is that visual simulation of the tower.
Would you like me to request that? This is-
Well, either Stephanie requested or,
Well, Stephanie can, whoever wants to request it to see if that's been done, that's fine. So,
Thank you. I
okay,
will.
Stephanie will follow up on
so
it. Okay.
Susan will request it? Is that the understanding?
Actually, Susan, if you could request it, that would be handy.
Okay,
Okay,
in your hands.
okay, I'll do that. So, I forgot that we requested the visual. That's all I have.
Very good, very good. Okay, annual landmark inspections, there's nothing to report on that, and except that I will say that the code says that the building department, the building inspector is responsible for enforcing the regulation of the landmark buildings that town board designates as landmarks. So I don't think we should get into the business really of probably doing that work as well. Okay, nothing to report on landmarks maintenance grants for nonprofits at this point. Certified local governments, we have done. And do we have other things that our members might be concerned about to be talked about? If not tonight, another time? So it seems like there is nothing further. So with that in mind, we'll adjourn the meeting. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, Kevin. You can end the recording.